Emphysema, people gasping. There's so many smokers, they can hardly breathe. And little by little, the fluid builds up in their lungs until the people die. And when you die, the organs of your body normally die too. They start to deteriorate within minutes after the blood stops circulating. But there's one exception that has been found by researchers and at the cardiopulmonary unit at the University of North Carolina Medical School. The lungs you have can live on for hours. And that fact is bringing hope to tens of thousands of people who need lung transplant. Laurie Johnson went down to North Carolina to bring us this story.
David Russell beat the odds, becoming one of only 1,600 people nationwide to get a new set of lungs. Only 15% of donated lungs are healthy enough for transplant.
It was such a great thing to be able to breathe again. Oh, you just don't know how much you appreciate breathing until you don't have it anymore. Oh, it was great.
The shortage of available lungs meant David would likely die while waiting for them.
I said, Lord, what I want to do is stay. I want to be with my family. I'd like to see some grandchildren. But if you want to take me, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter. My life's in your hands, and it's all up to you.
Most people don't realize the body parts used for transplants come from hospital patients who are brain dead and on life support. This works well for most organs like hearts and livers, but lungs are usually too damaged to be transplanted.
Those prolonged hospital stays lead to pneumonia and other complications.
At the time of their brain death, they may have vomited or aspirated, and that's also another issue that we have to worry about as well. Lungs are very finicky when it comes to evaluating them for transplants. One thing that we have to worry about with lungs is that there are not enough. You know, there are not enough organs out there for people who actually need them.
Bothered by this lung shortage, Dr. Thomas Egan came up with a way to tap into a new source. Donors who die suddenly, such as in the emergency room or at home. In other words, people who aren't on life support.
Individuals who die suddenly, while this is a really tragic event and a obviously very upsetting for next of kin, those lungs were perfectly normal up until the time of sudden death. They weren't subjected to the inflammatory processes of brain death.
Most of our organs die within minutes of being deprived of oxygen-rich blood, but lungs have an oxygen reserve due to the air left inside them.
They live for hours after death, and lungs can be recovered and safely transplanted, even if they're recovered after sudden death.
Wake County EMS partners with Dr. Egan to recover lungs from people who die on one of their calls and whose family consents.
They've just performed this resuscitation attempt in their home, and they were unsuccessful. And now we want to talk to them about organ donation, and that's a very difficult conversation. We don't want to miss the opportunity to ensure that the family realizes that our first goal was to make sure that they were resuscitated. So we don't want to blur those lines.
EMS workers pump more air into the lungs than transport the body to UNC. Then Dr. Egan uses a procedure called ex vivo lung perfusion to keep the lungs alive while examining them to make sure they're healthy enough for transplant.
And so down the road, it's quite possible that this new donor source, in addition to being much more plentiful than brain-dead organ donors, the lungs from these new donors might in fact turn out to be better than the lungs we're currently transplanting.
That way there will be more people like David who know what it's like to breathe free and look forward to a long life. Laurie Johnson, CBN News, Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Isn't that exciting? Isn't that wonderful that somebody who dies can live on with those lungs, and somebody who has had emphysema or some serious pulmonary disease, lung cancer, for example, they can be given a whole new life. It's marvelous.
And you said you met that man, and he wasn't standing, yes, and now he's standing.
Well, you know, our good friend is Andy Kaiser, who is now head of cardiology. down at the hospital of the University of North Carolina. And it's called the cardiopulmonary unit, and pulmonary is the half of this gentleman's involved. So we helped, do a heart lab down there that's very exciting. I saw these beating hearts and so on. But in any event, I met this gentleman, and what he was doing was so cutting edge. I thought, this is thrilling. We ought to get the report on it. So that's what that is. And it's great to see.
I've never heard anything like it. It's truly
it's
remarkable.
wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful.
Fantastic.
So our congratulations to UNC for what they're doing.